Hi, Paul Salter. Welcome to the Genetic Genius. I am so excited to have you as a guest today. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, I'm equally as excited. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Well, before we dive into talking all about weight loss, which I just love that subject. And so do the listeners. But I'd love for you to just kind of like introduce yourself, talk about kind of what your passion is, how you got to be where you are today, what your purpose is on the planet. So that our listeners can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, gladly. And I love that you use the word purpose because I'm a big believer that my purpose is simply to help others feel, look, and be the best version of themselves. And my story is has a quite interesting beginning. If you can imagine a 16-year-old multi-sport athlete who stood a whopping 5'1", maybe 5'2", and 110 pounds. I was quite the runt of all of my friends in my peer group, yet trying to keep up with everybody who was bigger, stronger, faster. And I really discovered just how gritty and resourceful I could be during that time. And I like to say, fortunately, I can claim 6 feet today. It just took a little while to get there. But it was during this time that I really recognized that what I put in my body started to give me an edge on outlasting my peers during practices, in games, and taking to exercise as a modality to help me keep up with everybody, become bigger, stronger, faster. And I took those two passions with me to the college level and realized that I wanted to help athletes in particular. For the longest time, that was a dream of mine. How can I connect with athletes at the highest level, helping them shape their food choices to perform their best? And I got to do that, which was really exciting. However, on my own personal journey, learning about the ins and outs of human nutrition and the body as a whole, I began to recognize that upon finishing a dieting phase, there was really no information or support out there about how to return to a life of normalcy without undoing all of your hard work. And the curiosity in me helped, direct me to learning all I could about what was out there. And through my own experiences, really learning like, hey, people need way more than just food support. There's an emotional element, a psychological element, a physiological element. And that simply has been the defining moment that has shaped the trajectory of not only my own personal growth, but how I help others for the last 10 or so years.
That's great. I love that story. I'm just shy of 5'1" myself. I'm never going to reach 6 feet though. But I do appreciate that connection. And, I love your passion and your purpose and really, helping people to be the best that they want to be and can be and helping them to attain it. Sometimes it's, that's what drives me too. And there's that kind of like bridge, right? That people are trying to like, how do I get over to the other side? I'm stuck on this side. And I love that's what you do with helping people with weight loss. And, I can't wait to dive into more of how you do that. So let's first, if we could just talk about kind of like the sustainability piece. So from that weight loss perspective, what is sustainable about weight? Like, is someone like looking for, is there a goal they're trying to get to? Is it a realistic goal? What's
Mm.
sustainable for their body?
Yeah, fantastic question. The first thing we have to hit on is, the weight loss and fitness industry as a whole has conditioned us to be set up for failure because ultimately I hate to say this, they want us to fail at the bigger scram level. Not every coach, not every company, of course, but ultimately, if you fail a diet, meaning you diet, you lose weight, and you regain it back, that means you have to probably buy something again. The weight loss industry makes money, and it's a terribly vicious cycle. So
Right.
we've been conditioned to put a lot of our self-worth into the number we see on the scale, what we see in the mirror. And what I can tell you I've observed, not only firsthand, but in so many I've worked with, is that say someone comes to me with let's say an arbitrary goal of wanting to lose 30 pounds. If instead of focusing on the scale, we focus on rebuilding a foundation of healthy eating habits that is individualized to that person, simple, and sustainable, what happens more often than not is maybe they're down 12 pounds, but they feel 100 times better. And now all of a sudden they can laugh at their once goal weight of 30 pounds less because they feel how they wanted to feel all the time. And they recognize they were never chasing a number on the scale. They were chasing a feeling associated with that number.
Right. Oh my God. I love that. It's so true. That emotion can drive us in ways that we can't even recognize too, because we're given all these subliminal messages, like you said, through the media, through TV, through magazines, through all the
Yeah.
different things we listen to. So when someone's looking for that sustainability, does it differ per individual? And then also, does it differ for like sex, for like male and female, for different age groups, etc.?
Absolutely. So if we first talk about the individual level, it's going to be very unique. You know, your goals, my goals, the listeners' goals obviously are very different. And what we need to keep in mind is the way we tackle a goal, we want to make sure that our approach is in line with something we could do the rest of our life. And I know you know very well, an easy example we could probably all relate to is doing the latest fad diet. Well, let's use the ketogenic diet, for example, and not to harp on the ketogenic diet, but 99% of us really love carbohydrates. So being asked to give them up for the rest of our life, it just sounds crazy to say out loud. So therefore,
Torture, right?
yeah. So if that doesn't align with something you can see yourself doing 50 years down the road, and I literally ask my clients that, like, can you do this
Mm,
for the next 50 years? If it doesn't, let's not put all of our energy, our time, and our effort there. And then the second thing to keep in mind, you know, from a male versus female, men and women standpoint, the approach we use to go achieve sustainable weight loss and happiness and joy and confidence isn't going to differ. It's just still going to go back to the principle of individualization. And we might find some general differences between the needs or the skill sets that need to be developed between the sexes, but otherwise, it's got to start with simply you and what you need to be, whatever it is, to achieve that goal.
so true. And that's how health, I think we're really seeing that change in health in general, is that we're moving from this place of, overall health into very individualized because everyone is
Yeah,
so different. So your DNA, my DNA, everybody listening, all our DNA is different. But we do have some basic foundational needs that are all the same, right? Water,
absolutely.
food, sleep, those things, we can all learn together about. What would you say like is the biggest change when you've worked with so many people to help ignite that weight loss within them? And what do you see as like that biggest change people need to make in the way that they view weight loss, not like necessarily in their weight loss in general?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So a couple things, and I think all change is going to originate. I know this is going to resonate with you right up here in the mindset. And the biggest catalyst for change I've been able to help people achieve is simply beginning with how they speak to themselves, how they handle that inner critic. And the reason I share that, and I'll get to the second part of your question in a moment, is because it's our self-talk and our word choice. That's silly, I'm dumb, I'm fat, I'm stupid. That influences our thought patterns, which influences our actions. And when we do the same actions over and over, those become our habits, which shape our results. And all of a sudden now we have shaped our identity just because we continue to speak negatively to ourselves. So a lot of work needs to be spent on bringing awareness to what the inner critic is saying or how
Mm-hmm.
nasty our self-talk can be, which we all have elements of this. But if we can bring awareness to it, well, now we open up an opportunity to substitute some of those words that are more positive, and that is going to have that same cascading effect to shape your thoughts, actions, results, and your identity as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
and then
key.
yeah. And then when it comes to the nutrition aspect too, I think unfortunately healthy eating continues, even though we've made such great strides over the last couple of decades, to get a negative reputation because everyone, in the fitness industry, it's like, oh, healthy eating, chicken, broccoli, brown rice on repeat 6 times a day, 7 days a week. And
Right.
it doesn't have to be that way. There's so much opportunity to eat foods you enjoy and just to be mindful of portions. You don't need to weigh and measure every single bite of food you eat, log every bite of food you eat in the food scale. And the biggest thing I can share, Dr. Lulu, is from a very young age, we are taught how to eat healthy. We understand the difference between healthy and not so healthy. So it's
Mhm.
really not a lack of nutrition knowledge. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. You Google how to lose weight or how to eat healthy, boom, in a matter of milliseconds, you
Right.
get like a bajillion answers. So
Yep.
it really comes to trusting yourself. Like, you know what to do.
Mm.
You've just got to be willing to be courageous just enough to trust that and take a positive step forward one day or one area of focus, one habit at a time.
Yeah, Paul, that is great because I think it's that really that trust piece is so key. You're talking about kind of like, having that mindset, having that shift in your pattern of belief. And we'll kind of dive a little bit more into that too. And, when we have this belief pattern that it's our thought process, like you said, like maybe you have the same tape loop where you're repeating over and over in your mind.
Yeah.
And until you can change that tape loop, you're just going to be stuck in the same, whether that's weight loss or it could be a job or it could be a relationship. It's kind of all the
Yep.
same,
It is.
right?
And I'm so happy you said that because I think, one of the biggest changes somebody can make when it comes to approaching weight loss, feeling better, eating healthier, is to recognize that, there's quite a marriage between, if we put everything under the personal growth umbrella, and nutrition. So a lot of what I do with people, it's not even nutrition focused, because like I said, nutrition, we know how to eat healthy. We need to tap into the personal growth, personal development side of the equation and spend a lot more time there. And if you start to treat yourself with the care and love and respect you deserve, your nutrition is going to fall into place.
Oh, that's so true. And you know what I find too with patients a lot is they, like you said, they know the knowledge of what to eat, but when it comes to cooking it, it's like a lot of them will say like, I hate to cook, or, I don't know what to cook. And I find like that's where the piece that got lost along the way, especially I think in the generation where they had parents from the 50s, that was a time when everything was like Betty Crocker. It came from like like a TV dinner or something. And so they didn't learn like the basics of even how to make a salad dressing. And so, which is unfortunate, but I think that's like part of that key piece. It's like, okay, I got the nutritional knowledge. I know, like you said, broccoli, chicken, rice, but how do I make it exciting? How do I make it so that I'm interested in what I'm making? Because that's, I think, that other key piece you were mentioning too, like having that like belief in yourself and having the excitement to do the weight loss. Because otherwise, you're not going to want to keep on going.
Absolutely. Very well.
And so you were talking a little bit about the change. We were talking about that change piece. And how connected is the emotional component to weight loss? I'd like us to dive a little bit deeper into that. So when we're talking about, you mentioned like the kind of that thought process and the tape loop, how important is that emotional component? If you never address that emotional component, like you're like, okay, here I go, I'm going to dive deep into this new weight loss program. Are you ever going to really see a shift that's sustainable?
Oh, great question. So the concept I like to use to illustrate this is, think about it like this. There is a major difference between two words that are unfortunately also are often misused interchangeably. Those words are simple and easy. And if we continue to play on our example of weight loss here, again, losing weight is simple. You eat fewer calories than you're burning, your body will begin to lose weight. Now, you and I and everyone listening know that is not easy. It is simple, but it's not easy. And what I've found in, a lot of my own research and trial and error with those I've worked with, is that there is a proven way to kind of elevate something that is simple to become easy. And it's all related to the emotional component with that. And what happens is, when something is simple, we're immediately going to start thinking about it. And if we take action right away, we block out any opportunity for emotion or our ego to get involved in the situation. And the reason that is so important is because our ego wants nothing more than to protect us, keep us inside our comfort zone. Hey, like, you're fine eating, fast food 5 nights a week. You're fine not going to the gym. You're comfortable. You're content. Our ego wants to keep us there. But if we take massive action, we remove any opportunity to invite emotion and ego to the equation. Therefore, we can elevate to that task being easy. And the reason that emotion is so important here is because if we build off of that ego and kind of parallel it with our inner critic tends to be kind of nasty, kind of mean, kind of rude. And that's what's going to fuel that fire of that negative thought loop over and over again. So the other, I guess, item worth mentioning there is we can use emotion to our advantage too. And even the negative emotion, which we can talk about if it comes up, of course, too, but from a positive standpoint, emotion has so much potential to drive action, because it ultimately allows you to connect to a feeling. And our feelings are literally the vibrations of our body caused by our thoughts. And they're going to be a lot more powerful than just thinking, I want to get off the couch to go to the gym, or I want to eat the salad. If it's, I want to get off the couch or eat the salad because I'm sick of feeling like this, or I want to feel like that. Now, all of a sudden, that's a game changer in elevating that activation energy that is required to actually take action.
Oh, yes. So true. I love that. And when we're talking about that piece there with just like that emotional component coming in. So I'm like, sorry, I've been thinking off into my brain for an instant. How does the piece of growing up? So you mentioned it a little bit, but I'd love to touch a base about, so we all have these food patterns and these thought processes or process that comes into our growing up, our patterns with our parents, and maybe even some eating disorders or different relationships with food. And how can we break those patterns when we're trying to move forward into a new place of weight loss?
Mm, What a great, I love talking about this. Such a great question. So the foundational context I think that'll help with this conversation component here is we need to keep in mind that between the ages of 0 and 6, we are especially malleable and sponge-like. And it's during this time that, the people 10,000 times smarter than me will estimate that 90 to 95% of our belief system is formed.
Mhm.
And that is simply shaped by our interactions with our parent, our guardian, our siblings, our caretakers, as well as our environment. So at this age, these beliefs, these limiting beliefs form in order to protect us. They are there
Mhm.
to serve, the 6-year-old us, the 5-year-old us. But we fast forward to the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old us, those same beliefs aren't serving us anymore. So the way that we can begin to unpack our limiting beliefs, those unconscious self-sabotaging behaviors, is actually beginning to bring awareness to the origin of those limiting beliefs, shining a big bright spotlight of awareness to recognize, hey, I might be thinking this because of an event that happened when I was 6 years old, 7
Mhm.
years old. And
Mhm.
if you can do that, you can then create an opportunity for understanding, an opportunity for forgiveness, whether it's forgiving a loved one, a family member, or yourself, and an opportunity to rewrite that belief to something that serves you in your current present day adult form.
I love that. Yeah, rewriting that belief because when we think about childhood, we all have some memory of food, right?
Oh, yeah.
Food like shapes a lot of our memories. Like, oh, my, dining out with friends or whatever, and I always have these memories of the garden because we had a big garden when I was little and going out and I could just eat whatever I wanted. I could eat like carrots or peas, anything
Yeah.
that I could like just pick off the vine and eat myself. And for me, I think that was like a great, like for me, that's my belief system. Like I can eat any vegetable I want at any time I want, and it's going to make me feel good because I always have that memory of being so happy in the garden. Now, not
Yeah.
everybody had that like growing up, but I think that's changing on the planet too. We're having a lot more of that, which is really great. And okay, so someone is looking to rewrite that story, that personal weight loss story, or maybe that limiting belief they have from growing up as a child. And what kind of habits then start to form from that? Like we're trying to break it. Say you have, I don't know, what would be a good example? Let's say a reward system like candy. That's a really
Mhm.
common one. Like, okay, so you did something good. You get to have a shake from the fast food place because great, you did a great job. So if that's our reward system and that's our habit, how then do we break that habit of that reward system? Because I think, do we have to replace it with like a new reward? A healthy shake?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Which there's probably a million recipes online for those too.
Right.
Uh, So every change we want to make simply starts with awareness. So if you have come to the point in your journey and you recognize that you have this reward system in place that is not serving how you want to feel, look, or be, that's the best place to start. That's excellent. You are already way further along the journey than you think. So it's an excellent position to be in. But now, kind of similar to the scale example we discussed earlier, we want to gain further awareness on the actual feeling we're chasing. So if we say, we do something good and we earn X, that's a great thing. But I think even a more common one our listeners relate to is we are stressed, we are
Mm,
upset, we want to feel better. So
right.
the example I talk about very often is if you come home from a long work day and maybe your kids are running like crazy, you still got to get them dinner, you dinner, your significant other dinner, take to and fro extracurriculars. You are stressed, you're physically drained, emotionally, mentally drained. You want nothing more than just a hit of something to make you feel good. You,
Mhm.
however, if you don't unpack this, simply think, I want a Snickers bar, I want ice cream, I want a glass of wine. And you think that's what you want. The feeling you want is, the taste of the Snickers bar on all of your taste buds. But in all actuality, after doing a little deep dive with yourself, a little reflection, you may recognize that you just want a moment to yourself. You want
Mm,
some affection, some compassion from your significant other. You want to better manage your stress. You want to feel in control. You want to feel confident. You want to feel inner peace. And the approach to start learning what you're actually craving, which probably isn't the candy bar, the treat, the glass of wine, is to get clear on what emotion you are trying to flip. Are we trying to turn stress into peace? Are we trying to turn frustration into happiness? And
mm,
once you gain clarity on the true emotion you're seeking, well, now the
mhm.
fun begins. So we get to treat it like an experiment and we get to kind of trial and error different substitution. So instead of the candy bar, maybe it's a 15-minute meditation session. Maybe it's quality time with your significant other. Maybe it's a walk outside with the dog. Maybe it's dancing in your living room, listening to a favorite song. And we simply observe honestly, non-judgmentally, to learn like, hey, is this doing the trick? Do I feel how I wanted to feel? Or no, okay, let me try another behavior. We simply just repeat that until we find the right one.
Right. Yeah. Like shift things out, like musical chairs.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So you're shifting this new habit into one that is sustainable, something that you're maybe achievable. And so you're working on this. And what happens, like, I think COVID has thrown a big wrench into a lot of people's like world, and things are shifting now. They're going to be able to go back and do things, but maybe what can you give some tips on, like, okay, say you're working at home now and that's your new life, because a lot of places have shift to that. How can you have, and maybe it's the COVID 15 or something instead of the freshman 15, right? It's like you've gained this weight because you haven't been moving as much. You have, maybe you're, like you said, that emotional component. Maybe you're feeling more stress, or maybe you're feeling depressed because you're not with your friends and family. How can people, what are like maybe like your two top tips that people could start bringing into their life right now to help shift things in this new place of work? Because I know a lot of people are it's including myself, I'm like spending way more time sitting on the computer. So I have a watch I'm like that tells me, like, hey, you better stand up and do something right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one piece of information to share here to preface my answer is there's a lot of cool research. There's this book out there. It's called Tiny Habits. I highly recommend, if you've never read it, to read it. It's by Dr. BJ Fogg. And he cites some research in there that one of the number one most influencing predictors of habit change is related to your environment. So now if we build off your example, we are cooped up in what inevitably was a stressful environment for at least the first part of the pandemic. You're maybe stuck at home with those you love dearly, but you don't want to see 24/7. You're trying to work from home. You're trying to do homeschool. Your environment is nothing but stress. It might even be toxic to some extent. So clearly, without that awareness, your thoughts are going to change, which we just talked about how it influences your actions and your results. So at least having the awareness on how influential your environment is can be a game changer for you, because now you can take a singular action step to do something small to change your environment. Maybe you're adding a piece of artwork, you're adding some live plants, flowers, you're lighting a candle, you're getting some scents going. The tiniest thing, again, it sounds kind of silly when we talk about it, but that can go so far into having a positive impact on your environment, which, as I just shared, tremendously impacts your willpower, your discipline to get up and do those new habits. But building off of that, I love that you said the example of movement, getting up something. And I could not agree more. We could have a whole separate podcast on the benefits of movement, exercise, structured it and not. But if you can find a way to move, get outside, just get some sunlight, it's going to have such an impact on you physically, but also your quality of life, well-being, and the amount of joy you're feeling every day, which will go even further, helping to kind of reshape the environment in which you're in.
Right. Oh yeah, totally. Like you said, movement is so key. And for me, I'm so busy that I usually have to set that kind of like routine for myself to exercise, or I just like kind of like don't do it. So I'll do, okay, in the morning is great for me because it also helps me to release stress, because I'm kind of like in my own zone and it's so quiet, outside, there's no cars, I can listen to the birds. And so I really like what you said about finding that peace that can create, decrease your stress. And stress, as we know, changes our cortisol levels, which does not help with weight gain or weight loss. Yeah. So so the two tips you said were like to have that kind of like mind frame shift of picking something in your environment, like changing your environment so that your workspace is more pleasing. And I did that. I added more artwork, and this was not like my office before, but now it is. And then the other piece I like we said is just that movement piece, really starting to have that in. And do you find when you're working with clients with weight loss that having a routine helps have more sustainable and longer results, or changing things up then is better? What do you see like the most results with?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I would say routine is absolutely invaluable to any part of the long-term sustainable transformation you are trying to achieve. And one of the biggest reasons as to why is routine creates an opportunity in which we can operate on autopilot. If we like to think of, willpower, the amount of mental, emotional energy we begin the day with, you and I both know it is quickly drained depending on our circumstances, which means it's easy to dive into the ice cream or to dive into the fast food restaurant, not get off the couch to go exercise. But if we've created routines where we really like literally don't have to think about what we do, we just suddenly we snap back into consciousness and we're already putting on our gym shoes because it's 4 o'clock, then we are preserving our willpower, that precious energy, so we can continue to make conscious decisions that set us up for the long-term success we're seeking.
Oh, that's great. I really like what you said, Paul, about having that more willpower, more energy, right? Because we want to work out, and it does, we see the results, but at the same time, we want to be able to have the energy for our family, for our community, for fun, and exercise is fun, but we want to have the energy to do the other things too, and have that brain power. And so when we're talking about that weight loss component, what are some things that people can bring in from that? Like, I'm just talking about that focus and energy piece, because I know that's really important for people. Do you see a lot of people have the shift of a gain in energy as they're moving into a weight loss program with you? Do you see, it's like, wow, this person came in maybe at a lower fatigue level, and then as they shift, their energy starts to change?
Great question. Yeah. So first and foremost, the significance of some nutrition changes and adjustments we make is obviously going to have a positive contribution to energy levels. But what I've really found, because those I specifically work with are high achieving mothers, and mothers, women in general, but mothers in particular, are put in a really tough spot because they are asked every single day to wear 15 different hats. They have to put their wife hat on, their mom hat, employer, employee, friend, neighbor, daughter, sister, etc. And rarely do they ever get a chance to catch their breath and put their own hat on to take care of themselves. And where I've seen the biggest transformations, the way I really like to exemplify this is when I look at my clients before and after photos of a dieting phase. What really changes, like, it's great to see physique changes or changes on the scale, but it's the changes in body composition and the smiles on their faces. Because when they put themselves first, ultimately what happens is they expand their capacity to have more energy during the day, which means they can be the better mother, the better wife, the better daughter, sister, friend, etc. But the energy shift really comes down to making your own self-care a priority above anything else.
Oh my God. I believe that 100%. I'm talking to that with my patients all the time, and if we don't have the self-care for ourselves, we cannot take care of our others around us, our family and friends and community. It's so key. And, I really like what you said too about that. So many people, especially that mom, right, who's wearing all those different hats, it's so challenging for them to take the time. It's like, well, I can't even take 5 minutes because I have like 8,000 things to do. And if I take that 5 minutes to go for a run, I'm not going to get the other thing done, and there's a lot of single moms out there, and single dads, single parents in general, who are, trying to do things on their own. And that can be really challenging with kids. I have a lot of friends in that space, and, it's like, well, what do you do? How do you even make this space? So if you what would you recommend? Say someone is wanting to lose weight, and they're like coming to you, and they're like, okay, I'm a single mom or single dad or single parent. How do I make the time to even want to lose weight or be able to have that sustainable weight loss? How do they make that shift?
Great question. So the first thing is literally the mental shift, is viewing as the benefit that if you take, let's say, 5 minutes for yourself, you are the better mother, the coach, the employer, the employee. So if we can at least begin by wrapping our heads around that and taking ownership of that, that is an excellent start to get way ahead of the past version of yourself. And then secondly, I'm not suggesting or even advocating you take a 60-minute break to go meditate and then a 60-minute session to go work out later.
No?
It can be, I know, right? It can be as simple as 5 minutes, but what matters most is the focus, intention, and energy that you bring to those 5 minutes. You need to go all in. It boils down to quality over quantity here. We want quality 5 minutes, not a lackadaisical 5 minutes where you're kind of meditating, but you're really just scrolling on Facebook or Instagram. It needs to be all about you for 5 minutes with the utmost of intention. And then as you begin to feel and see the difference, you're more motivated maybe to do 10 minutes, maybe to do 15 minutes. And now all of a sudden you're just building that skill and it's becoming easier, more second nature. And soon you're going to find yourself in a position where you crave that time. And when you don't make that time, you're just going to feel off and just a little different. And you're going to wish you had made the time.
Right. Yeah, totally. I love that. And when someone's making the time in their schedule, so let's say, I like what you said, really, like, it doesn't have to be like 2 hours. It could start small. do you think, and I think there's been some studies, I can't remember exactly, but I think there was a recent study which showed that doing like shorter amounts of time spread throughout the day is actually now being more beneficial, because I think that, especially with COVID, where we have like, we're working from home more, sitting more, have you seen that, or do you know about that particular aspect where if you're doing like, okay, I got 5 minutes, I can take a little break in between my Zoom meetings.
Yeah, so I think it's beneficial on two layers. Number one being from an exercise standpoint, there is a lot of
Mm-hmm.
research that shows like if you're trying to work out, let's say 30 minutes a day, but you need to do 3 10-minute intervals at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. because that's all you got, that's a heck of a lot better than doing nothing. There is a
Right.
lot of benefit there, whether you are a beginner or even an intermediate athlete or a gym goer. So that's fantastic. And then secondly, because we are in the age of Zoom calls and Zoom meetings every day, those 5 minutes, as often as possible, those 2 minutes can be a complete game changer on just resetting your energy, your intention. I mean, I can specifically tell you today, I've had back-to-back calls, but I've taken 2 minutes before every call to go lay down next to my dog and just take a couple deep breaths and recharge. And I'm
Yeah,
back with as much
boom.
energy as possible.
Right, ready to go. Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I think it's so key for that weight loss component to, if you're like, I think a lot of my patients and listeners out here too, it's like you feel defeated. If you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
set this goal and I'm like, okay, if I didn't do the hour or 30 minutes of workout, well, I'm just not going to do it today because I just, I set this goal. So does it, from what it sounds like you're saying, is to even just, if you can't, maybe not even have that goal, maybe be more loose, creating the habit, but maybe if you're having that time to have a little bit here and there throughout the day and having your total like time throughout the day,
Yeah.
be like, okay, I'm going to have, my X goal is maybe if you have a Fitbit or something, like an
Yeah.
hour total. Is that what you're mentioning and clarifying?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to recap. And then one other thing I'll add too is think as tiny as possible. Like, so yeah, your daily intake, if we go back with the 30-minute example we discussed a moment ago, and we're breaking it up into either 10-minute intervals or 5 minutes, the tinier, the better, because here's why. With every tiny opportunity, you create an opportunity to build momentum.
Mm.
And 2 minutes is not nearly as daunting as 20 minutes, 30 minutes, as we know.
Right.
But the one missing link, and this connects beautifully with what we discussed a little while ago, is bringing emotion into your accomplishment. And again, I'm shouting out that book, Tiny Habits, just because it was really
Mm-hmm.
impactful in my life and my coaching. But he talks about celebrating your tiny wins and specific, like, again, doing 2 minutes to yourself, celebrating that. And the example he uses to cultivate such strong, positive emotional energy is he talks about celebrating as if you just landed your dream job or your first ever job. Because think about how great you feel. And if you do that
Mm-hmm.
with something as simple as, I just took a 2-minute lap around my house, your brain chemistry starts to change. So you ultimately begin to crave that. And now you're craving self-care time. And who doesn't want that?
Totally. And I love that you said that brain chemistry, because those neurotransmitters are so key and
Yeah.
important for weight loss. So, it's like all about the emotions, how we feed that emotion, what that emotional response is. And when we have that positive response, we want to do it more, like, like eating like a healthy thing, like a carrot.
Yeah.
We don't always want carrots, but they're good though.
My dog would beg to differ. That's his favorite.
Oh, nice. Yeah. My parents, their dog loves carrots. He used to. Okay, so I wanted to ask a couple questions about lab work. So do you work with clients with labs? Do you recommend they do any type of testing? Like, but example would be like blood sugar or lipids to kind of set that baseline before beginning a weight loss program, just to maybe like show some quantitative and qualitative, type of results? Or do you find that maybe you don't need that because the proof is in the pudding, so to speak?
Yeah, so I typically do not begin with that approach unless there is an immediate, let's call it a red flag, if you will, that stands out to me as I'm going through the onboarding questionnaire and getting to know the individual. But I'm glad you shared that, because it's very important to make sure that there are many parameters of progress we can track beyond the scale. And I can tell you that with every single person I work with, or 99%, who comes to me wanting to lose weight, we'll spend anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks in our first couple of months together not doing anything related to weight loss. All we focus on is building a foundation of healthy eating habits, because that in of itself is really freaking stressful. So why would we add the stress that a diet brings on top of that? That's not a recipe for success.
Right.
So by not focusing on the scale for so long, it becomes essential that we have other areas of progress. And, the lab results might come in depending on the individual, but more often than not, we'll choose other metrics. We'll choose how we rate qualitatively their relationship with food, their relationship with themselves, how they feel about themselves, how has their consistency and compliance related to either workouts and movement per week, meal prep per week, staying on plan, how has their confidence and their ability to go to the grocery store, prep their food, set them up for success change. So we look at various parameters and we look to assess them on a regular cadence. That way we can intervene, learn, pivot, reassess as necessary.
That's great. I love that. And that's a wonderful way to measure your success too, from that emotional component. Because when you're feeling better, that things are working.
Yeah.
If you're continuing to feel crappy, so to speak, then you don't be like, well, what's not working? And so when you have something that you're monitoring from that emotional component, that's a really key. I really like that. And I do a lot of that with my patients with like a gratitude journal, something that shows, that they're like, okay, I got to work on the emotional piece. And how can I do that? And so I really like that you're doing that measurement key piece, because I find that is, I would say it's like life-changing for a lot of people who have never either had that component in the nutritional plan or weight loss program they work with, or maybe they haven't like tried it in the right way.
Yeah. So I like to call them our non-scale victories. So same exact premise. Every day when they wake up, 2 non-scale victories. Every day before they go to bed, they start to log it. And I think the biggest differentiating factor related to how valuable that exercise can be is to actually go back and review past entries so you can spot the progress that takes place over time. It's always so cool to see like, oh, I really have changed the way I think or feel about X, Y, and Z.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's so key. And, it's really fun. I'm really busy, so I don't always have time to write stuff down. I do journaling though too, but a lot of times I'll just have my phone on me or my watch, and I'll just say, take a message, so that way I can keep track in some kind of form, and then I can transcribe it later.
Yeah.
I like a lot to do that, it shows you that improvement. That's something, from A to B. And a lot of times we forget, I'll have patients who they start out and they feel this way. They feel like, they don't feel really good, and they give all the symptoms. Right. And then when they get down the road to feeling better, they forget that they even had all that stuff in the past. So oh yeah, remember you wrote this down. And so I think that's true what you're saying with weight loss. It helps us to have that backlog.
Bingo. And also, as I know very well, it trains your brain to continue hunting for those positives. So it keeps you in that positive mindset, not 24/7, but much more than maybe you previously were, which is going to have a tremendous impact on your willingness and motivation to, stay on track with your nutrition, your movement, et cetera.
Yeah, you have to have some reward. There has to be some benefit. Maybe it's like for one person, maybe to get into those pair of skinny jeans. That could be the reward. Maybe that's not a good one, but like you said, we don't want it. That can have an emotional baggage connected to it. So maybe that wasn't the best example there, but you know what I mean? To have some type of reward. Maybe you're going to take yourself out to a nice dinner, or maybe you're going to go on a vacation. Some type of reward, I think, helps your mind to have the goal, an achievable goal.
Absolutely.
And talking about goals, what do you think about when someone comes to see you and they're like, okay, I'm at X amount of weight and I want to get to this X amount of weight. What do you talk to them about that achievable goal? Is it reasonable? And the time frame, something like, I want to lose 20 pounds this month. Right. And so that's not really an achievable goal or sustainable. So what's that kind of what's that range that you see the question is what's the range of the most achievable and sustainable weight loss goal?
Yeah. So the range we're going to work with is 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. If you're losing weight at that pace, if we use a 200-pound person as an example, that's 1 to 2 pounds per week. You can almost guarantee that if you have the foundation of healthy habits in place, that you are going to be able to sustain that weight loss so long as you are dieting for the appropriate duration. See, here's where a lot of people get off track is they push these diets 12, 16, 20, 24 weeks, and you're just grinding your physiology, into the ground. So there needs to be an appropriate timeline on your diet. For the 1,400 plus people I've worked with over the years, 8 to 10 weeks seems to be the sweet spot when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
not only maximizing weight loss, but successful weight maintenance as well.
That's great. And what happens what's the plateau? I think that's commonly talked about, like in like, oh, I
Yeah.
haven't hit this quote unquote plateau.
Yeah. So what's happening here is I like to use this example. Let's assume that walking around in everyday life, eating normally, we maintain our weight eating 2,000 calories per day.
Hmm.
Again, arbitrary example. So in
Right.
order to initiate weight loss, we need to create a calorie deficit. So if we don't change a thing except for our nutrition, we'll bring our calories down to, let's say, 1,600.
Hmm.
Well, we have to remember that a diet is a significant stress, emotional, physiologically, psychologically, and our body
Hmm.
hates to be stressed. So it will
Right.
fight back tooth and nail from every angle. I like to say that the body becomes this master mixed martial artist. It's going to kick, punch, throw, and toss you, because what's going to happen is it's going to try to conserve energy. It's going to reduce the number of calories you burn. It's going to increase your appetite stimulating hormones. It's going to decrease your appetite suppressing hormones. All these physiological and psychological changes take place. And the really cool thing, one of many about our bodies, is that they are highly dynamic. So
Mm.
that 1,600 calories that was once a calorie deficit, in a few weeks, your body has adapted so tremendously. Now it's your new baseline maintenance intake. So
Mm.
now it means you've reached this plateau. And in order to lose more weight, you have to either reduce your food further, increase your exercise, or a combination of both.
Right. Do some like new shift. And when do you like reevaluate that? Is that after that time period that you said, that kind of like 8 to 10 week zone? That's that sweet spot. Is that when you usually do that kind of like reevaluation? Like, hey, how are things going? Are you still losing weight, or do you need to shift things in your system?
Typically much sooner than that. So what I'll
Hmm.
find, if we kind of go with that 2,000 calorie example, and we begin our diet at 1,600, we'll monitor all of those variables I mentioned previously, but now we'll put a little bit more stake in the scale, in progress photos, in body composition measurements, and we'll
Right.
really just be patient. One of the
Hmm.
many mistakes people make is that they try to cut their food too quickly. And the
Right.
goal of any diet should be to lose weight while eating as much food as possible. Like if you can
Hmm.
eat 1,800 calories per day and lose weight, why eat 1,600? Like we like
Right.
to eat.
Why
So we don't
starve
need to,
ourselves?
yeah, no unnecessary suffering needed. But
No.
what we'll inevitably find is typically within 3 to 4 weeks, you're going to start to see a trend that represents some type of plateau on the scale, or at
Mm.
least a slowing down of weight loss due to the body adapting. And depending on the person, the goal, the timeline, the amount of room we've built
Hmm.
in for dieting, we might be proactive and get way ahead of that and make
Right.
another adjustment, or we might wait until there's like a definitive plateau before making another nutrition adjustment to reinitiate weight loss.
Oh, great. Thanks for explaining that. Cause I think that's common. Those are some things that people like hear the terminology, or they've
Yeah.
experienced it themselves. They don't know how to like break through that barrier. And then also I hear that people, like when they hit that plateau, so to speak, that they kind of like give up. They're like, well, that's it. I'm on
Yeah.
this. And then that's, like you said, that's not sustainable. And having that awareness to make that nutritional shift, or maybe change the exercise. And our body, like you said, is super adaptable, but it also likes
Yeah.
to change. If we're doing the same thing all the time, we're going to be bored. Our brain's gonna be like, okay, I need a different food, or I need a different exercise, change things up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'd love to talk about fat cells for a minute. So, the adipose, or the AKA like fat cells.
Mhm.
So, do you think that it's important to have some kind of, when we're talking about those measurements, I know we talked a little bit about them, like a BMI measurement, or an actual like body fat index, to see what the state of health of those fat cells are? And do you think that that is realistic? I'm just curious what your thoughts are, if you think they're like true measurements, and if they create some kind of mindset, some shift in the body that really is not that like helpful.
Yeah. So I think some type of reliable and type
Mhm.
of body composition measurement can be very advantageous. As I know you probably agree, numbers and data can be extremely beneficial. It can
Mhm.
be challenging to remove the emotion attached with them, but if we approach them objectively in a black and white manner, they can be very helpful in helping to map out the trend and change
Mhm.
over time. So
Mhm.
what I recommend, only if readily available for a client,
Mhm.
is either a DEXA body scan
Mhm.
or some type of bod pod measurement. That way they
Mhm.
have an accurate estimation, again, keyword estimation, not
Right.
100% accurate there, of their current state of body fat percentage, muscle, and other tissues, so that we can maybe use that at the time we begin a diet and then compare those 8, 10, 12 weeks later to truly
Mm.
quantify some of the changes that took place beyond the scale, the body composition measurements, the photos, the feelings, etc.
Right. And that's super informative because we want to do something, is really has the evidence behind it, that it not just maybe it like taking your own measurement, which you could do
Yeah,
with like a tape measure. Like that's not going to give you maybe the accurate results that you're looking for, right? And like that
correct.
you mentioned, like doing that body scan, because it can give you lots of good data, of course, using a
Yeah.
reliable source about how your body's behaving in the inside.
Absolutely. And I will say too, it's worth mentioning, a lot of people own those scales, those bioelectrical impedance analysis scales that give
Mhm.
you a body fat percentage reading. They are some of the most inaccurate scale or readings ever because they're so influenced by your state of hydration. So
Right.
just a word of caution, you can use them to identify trends, but the number you see itself may be completely inaccurate.
Right. Yeah. And I think I totally can see that on my scale, because I'm like, I'll get on and then I'll get off and get back on again. I'm like, oh, how could you give me like a totally different number? Like I'm the same person. I didn't do anything different between like that 1 second to the next second. So I know that they're not reliable. And I
Yeah.
think that weight doing, checking your weight can be a real trigger for people too. And do you recommend doing like, not weighing yourself, maybe like in the beginning, like, okay, here's my weight, maybe like I'm 155 or something, and then like taking a break during the weight loss program so that you're not being triggered the whole time?
Such an interesting topic because I could tell you the pros and cons and advocate for both sides of the spectrum, but I'll tell you
Right.
what I've observed and what I do. I think there is absolutely a time and place for what I like to call scale vacations, where we just
Mm,
toss it and forget it, mainly for emotional and mental health. If you're
right.
stepping on the scale and the number you see is having an impact on your day, that's not a good thing. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
an objective piece of data. So if we notice that's a trend in our communication, we just simply go on a scale vacation and we don't think twice.
Scale vacation.
However, yeah, there's a lot of research that shows, particularly in people who have just finished a diet and are trying to maintain their weight loss, that daily weigh-ins can be very advantageous because it is a way to hold yourself accountable to doing
Mm,
what you know you need to be doing. So now I've just shared with you, Dr. Lulu, you can weigh in 0 days per week or 7 days per week.
right.
And there's merit to both, but ultimately, I think 2 to 3 times per week should be a
Hmm.
baseline with the opportunity to go to one end of the extreme on a case by case basis. But the 2 to 3 times per week allows you to collect just enough data points to really identify a weekly average. And
Hmm.
that's what should be compared week over week. We should not get too
Mm,
caught up and put too much weight into a single way. And we want the long
right.
term trend.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I love that because it's so true. We want to have the reward, the data that we're having the shift, so that we keep on growing. But
Yeah.
otherwise, it can be a super trigger and not motivate us too. If we're like, okay, well, nothing's happening, nothing's shifting on the scale. Why am I doing this anyway?
Which is again why it's so important to have many other areas to assess our progress.
Right. Yeah, totally. Okay, let's talk about, you have a couple things I'd love for you to talk to the audience about. One is, what's your significant sustainable weight loss formula? And I'd love for you to talk about
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but the three observations I've had in the people I've worked with over the years who have had the most success, their foundation of healthy eating habits is based on simplicity, sustainability, and individualization. And where this significant sustainable weight loss formula comes in is really focusing on those, but first beginning with the component of individualization. And from
Mm,
individualization, if we think of a flow chart, we see individualization on our screen. We have multiple
mhm,
little points coming off. We need to ask ourselves questions like, how many times per day do I want to eat? At what times per day do I want to eat? Do I want to eat breakfast? Do I want to practice intermittent fasting? Do I want to prioritize this nutrient over the other? There's a million and one different ways to eat and lose weight. We just need to simply ask ourselves how we want to eat to feel, look, and be the best version of ourselves. And when we do that, our next, part of the flow chart moves to simplicity. Does the way you've chosen require you to spend an hour in a day or hour per day logging it in an app? Does it require you to do advanced calculus just to figure out how much you need to eat? So again, we need to then answer these questions through the lens of sustainability. And if we focus on individualization and sustainability, we have now created an opportunity for adherence. Adherence is the name of the game. With adherence comes consistency, which comes results. And I think it's important to note, I never once used the word perfection. It's all about just consistency. So again, now if we kind of flow left to right, we've got our individualization, we've got simplicity, which influences adherence. Adherence over and over is consistency, and that's what drives significant sustainable results.
Awesome. What a great formula. Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And tell us about your 5% community. What's all that about?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you asked. So this is selfishly something just as important for me in my own personal growth and healing as it is for all of our wonderful community members. And it's really designed for high achieving mothers to reclaim their confidence, their inner peace, and their calm and control, rebuild their relationship with food, and ultimately break free of that yo-yo dieting cycle so they can feel, look, and be their best. And, the way we focus is a holistic approach in tackling the emotional, the psychological, and behavioral components that are really rooted in the problems and challenges we're facing with trying to lose weight, trying to keep it off, trying to have more energy. And the way we do this is with simply an unmatchable supportive community, weekly live coaching calls from myself, our other coach, and other experts in different avenues. And then we also have what we like to call our online component, or our transformational and therapeutic curriculum, that does a great job helping you go back to identifying the origin of some of your negative self-talk, your toxic thoughts, your limiting beliefs, and self-sabotaging behaviors, so you can begin to rewire and reframe some of those behaviors and ultimately rebuild the relationship with yourself and who you want to become.
I love that. That's great. That sounds like a great community to be involved in. What's the 5% for?
Great question. So the research will tell us that over the last 50, 60 years, this research has been out there, of the tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of people who diet every single year, within a year, 85% of those people will have gained the weight that they lost. Within 3 years, that number rises to 95. So really it boils down to about 5% of people being able to lose significant weight and keep it off. So the 5% community was born out of that, and us providing every piece of education, support, accountability, and inspiration and coaching needed to help every single member become one of the elite 5%ers.
Oh, love it. That's great.
Yeah.
And how can people find out more about you? Where can they find you on your website, find out about the 5% community, and have you helped them with weight loss?
Absolutely. So Instagram is actually the best place to connect with me. And my handle is at Paul Salter Coaching. I'm very active there. I love sharing all of the many wins and transformations from our 5% community there. And that's also the best place to connect with me to, book a discovery call to learn more about how my team and I may be able to serve and support you, or simply just come for plenty of dog and cat photos, entertainment, education, and something to brighten up your day.
Oh, love it. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time today. We have one last question. So
Yeah.
if you had an unlimited budget and you could do anything you wanted in the world with it, what would you do to make the biggest impact right now on the planet?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I would find a way to expand the reach of every aspect of the 5% community into every aspect of the world, to give people the opportunity that there is something out there that is designed for those who are feeling stuck, feeling like they are suffering in silence, that would restore hope that you're not the only one struggling with your relationship with the scale, with food, with yourself. There's hope. And I would just want to give access to that.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Ding, you got that one.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Well, thanks again, Paul, for taking the time today. I can't wait to have you back on again. I think we're having you on to talk about movement would be really fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.